A film once shook the world, not with explosions or special effects, but with the sound of nails being driven into wood, with the heavy weight of a cross dragging across the ground, with the silence that followed a tomb sealed shut. The Passion of the Christ, directed by Mel Gibson, was never just a movie. It was a testimony of faith that went far beyond the walls of a cinema. It was a cry that pierced through noise, disbelief, and indifference. It touched souls across the globe, leaving people on their knees in tears, rediscovering not only faith, but themselves. Nearly 2 decades later, that testimony still echoes. Even now, people speak of how it changed their lives, how it shook them to the core. And yet the story is not over. Mel Gibson is not finished. He is returning, and he is not returning quietly. He is coming back with a sequel that dares to go beyond pain, beyond suffering, beyond the cross itself. Its title is simple, but its meaning is infinite: The Resurrection of the Christ. This is not just another film project to discuss. It is more than an upcoming movie that will eventually be released to theaters. What lies before us is a story that stretches far beyond the screen. It is the tale of the battles fought behind the making of the Passion, the hopes and challenges surrounding this new chapter, and above all, the eternal truth at its heart: the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That truth is not locked in history. It is not a memory sealed in dusty pages. It is a living reality, powerful enough to transform everything, even for you, as you listen right now. To understand the weight of this new project, we have to return to the beginning. The year was 2004. Mel Gibson was already one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. He had won an Academy Award for directing Braveheart. He had starred in blockbuster films. By every measure of worldly success, he had already achieved it all. But there was something inside him that would not rest. He wanted to tell a story that mattered, not in a commercial sense, but in an eternal one. He wanted to tell the story of Jesus Christ's final hours on earth, and he wanted to tell it without compromise. No softening of the blows, no sugarcoating of the suffering, no modern translations to make audiences comfortable. His vision was radical. The film would be spoken entirely in ancient tongues: Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. Dead languages, long forgotten by most, yet alive with authenticity. This choice alone placed viewers 2,000 years back in time, forcing them to see, hear, and feel the story in its raw, original atmosphere. The film itself was unrelenting. The violence was not stylized. It was brutal, blood poured freely. Tears streamed, flesh was torn. The camera did not turn away, and for many viewers, neither could their eyes. For some, it was too much. Critics labeled it excessive, fanatical, even dangerous. Hollywood executives turned their backs. Major studios refused to touch the project. But ordinary people responded differently. They understood that this was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was truth. This was the gospel brought to life with no filter. The response was astonishing. Against all odds, The Passion of the Christ grossed over $611 million worldwide. That made it one of the highest-grossing religious films in history. And remember, the budget was only about $30 million, most of it paid out of Gibson's own pocket, even at the cost of mortgaging his house. In the world of cinema, that is called a miracle. But the real miracle was not in the box office numbers. It was in the hearts of the people who watched it. Pastors around the world began to report extraordinary stories. A woman who had abandoned her faith for 2 decades walked into a church again after seeing the film. An abortionist doctor, hardened by years of routine, was shaken by the crucifixion scene and turned his life around. A prisoner serving a sentence for murder wrote to his chaplain in tears, confessing his sins, saying, "Now I understand what it means to be forgiven." Confessionals were filled. On Good Friday, churches once again became places of silence, weeping, and prayer. For some, even walking past a crucifix was never the same again. One viewer said, "I can no longer walk past without stopping, without looking, without remembering." That was the film's power. It was not entertainment, it was a call. Yet the making of the Passion was itself a kind of passion. Gibson fought rejection, criticism, and scorn every step of the way. Hollywood dismissed it, activists condemned it. The media labeled it anti-Semitic even before its release, fearing it would spread hatred. Gibson defended himself, saying the film was not about blaming a people, but about revealing the universal sin that placed Christ on the cross, the sin of all humanity. Still, protests erupted, articles raged, threats were made. Even on set, struggles mounted. Jim Caviezel, the actor chosen to portray Jesus, endured trials that went far beyond acting. He was struck by lightning during filming. He dislocated his shoulder under the crushing weight of the cross. He suffered hypothermia during long hours of exposure. At one point, he said, "It wasn't just acting, it was testimony." And anyone who has seen his performance knows those words are true. Now, 20 years later, the silence has ended. Mel Gibson is preparing to return with the resurrection of the Christ. Filming is set to begin in August 2025 at the legendary Cinecittà Studios in Rome, with additional scenes shot across the ancient landscapes of southern Italy. Cities of stone, places where time seems to have stood still, will form the backdrop. Authenticity will once again be central, and at the heart of it all, Jim Caviezel will once again take up the role of Jesus. In his own words, Caviezel declared, "This will be the greatest film in history." Mel is creating something that unites the power of the gospel with a cinematic vision the world has never seen. The film will not simply show the empty tomb. It will dive into the mystery of the 36 hours that changed the world forever. It will portray Christ's descent into hell, his triumphant breaking of chains, his freeing of the righteous souls who had waited for centuries. It will show his appearances to the disciples, the road to Damascus, where hearts burned as he spoke, the moment Thomas's doubt melted into faith as he touched the risen Christ. This vision is vast. Gibson has said he does not only want to portray history, he wants to show the cosmic weight of the resurrection. The resurrection isn't just a historical fact, he explained. It's a cosmic event. I want to show its greatness, its mystery, its victory. For this reason, he has drawn not only from the Gospels, but also from theological texts, mystical visions, and the writings of saints and scholars. For the Passion, he relied heavily on the visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich, the German mystic who saw vivid details of Christ's suffering. For the sequel, he is again drawing from her accounts, particularly her descriptions of Christ's descent into the realm of the dead, where light shattered darkness and chains fell away. Saint Faustina Kowalska, the mystic of divine mercy, also described visions of the risen Christ, surrounded by light no human eye could describe. "Death is defeated," she recorded him saying, "Do not be afraid." The early church fathers add further richness. St. Gregory of Nyssa wrote that Christ, in rising, did not only open his own tomb, but opened the way for every believer. That statement could serve as the heartbeat of the entire film, not just an event long past, but a promise alive today. Rumors suggest the production will use visuals rivaling epic fantasy films, like The Lord of the Rings, but without sacrificing the raw intimacy that made the Passion so powerful. Imagine the grandeur of cosmic victory, combined with the closeness of Christ standing in a locked room, saying to fearful disciples, "Peace be with you." The resurrection is not simply a beautiful ending to a tragic story. It is the very foundation of Christian faith. Without it, the cross is meaningless. Without it, death still reigns. As St. Paul said plainly, if Christ has not been raised, your faith is in vain. But because he has risen, everything changes. Death does not have the last word. Suffering is not eternal. Pain is not the end. There is light, there is victory, there is life. Think of the world we live in now, filled with bad news, with war, with sickness, with despair. Think of the weight people carry daily: grief, depression, loss, betrayal. The resurrection is God's eternal answer. It is the proof that evil can be defeated, that love is stronger than hate, that life conquers death. Mel Gibson knows that telling this story again will not be easy. The same criticisms, protests, and accusations may return. Hollywood may turn its back. Funding may remain uncertain, but Gibson is determined. He has said, "I don't care about pleasing Hollywood. I want to please God. This story must be told." That courage is contagious. Despite personal struggles, scandals, and very public battles with addiction, Gibson continues to lift up his faith through cinema. And this new film, if completed, may very well be his masterpiece. It will not only show the glory of Christ, it will show the fragility of his followers. Thomas doubting until he touched the wounds. Peter ashamed after denying him. Mary Magdalene overwhelmed with joy at hearing her name spoken by the risen Lord. These stories remind us that the resurrection is not about perfect people. It is about broken people being made whole. But the film also promises to explore something deeper, the spiritual consequences of the resurrection for all humanity. The Apostle Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15 that Christ's resurrection is the first fruits of all who will rise. It is the guarantee that death is not the final chapter for any of us. For centuries, believers have meditated on this truth, and yet it remains so radical that the world can scarcely comprehend it. To witness it on film is not merely to watch history, it is to step into hope itself. Moreover, Gibson has indicated that the resurrection of the Christ will illuminate the unseen spiritual battles that accompany this event. The resurrection is not just about Jesus leaving the tomb. It is about Satan's defeat, the release of divine mercy, and the affirmation that no darkness can overpower light. Viewers can expect to see, in cinematic form, a struggle far beyond the human eye, a celestial victory enacted as the foundation for our earthly hope. And here is where the story turns to you. This is not just about Mel Gibson or Jim Caviezel or even a film. This is about the living reality of the resurrection and what it means for you today. Either Christ is alive or everything is an illusion. If he is alive, then he is alive for you right now. He is not waiting in a history book. He is knocking at the door of your heart, not with force, but with love. Perhaps you feel crushed by life. Perhaps you carry burdens too heavy to name. Perhaps you have lost faith, or you feel unworthy of God's presence. The resurrection is for you. It is the promise that your suffering is not eternal, that love is stronger than the grave, that someone loves you more than you can imagine. When the resurrection of the Christ is finally released, do not watch it as just a film. Watch it as an invitation. Let it remind you that the tomb is empty. Let it speak to you that life, not death, has the final word. Let it call you to rise, to hope, to live differently. Because the truth remains, Christ is risen. He is truly risen, alleluia. And beyond the film itself, the cultural ripple effect may be profound. Imagine communities gathering, not to debate box office numbers, but to reflect on eternity. Imagine teachers, pastors, and parents using the film to open conversations about faith, hope, courage, and redemption. Imagine a world, even for a few hours, remembering that the greatest story ever told is not a story of despair, but a story of victory, a victory that changes everything. Mel Gibson, once again, is daring to remind the world that faith is not passive. It is active, it is compelling. It challenges, it convicts, it heals, and it restores. The resurrection is not a passive event. It is a call to transformation, a call to live differently, a call to see life through the lens of eternity. This is the power Gibson hopes to capture, something the camera can show, but more importantly, something the heart can feel. In the end, the resurrection of the Christ is more than a sequel, more than a cinematic achievement. It is a spiritual invitation. It is an artistic declaration that truth, beauty, and life are intertwined. And as audiences around the world prepare to witness this monumental story, one thing is certain. The echo of that empty tomb, the echo of love conquering death, will resonate far longer than any critic's words, far beyond the walls of any cinema, and deep into the hearts of all who are willing to believe. Christ is risen. He is truly risen. Alleluia.